What up, Guru Nation? So, in this video, you're going to see me react to the interview that we did on our other channel, the Clinical Research Circle. Two of our team members, Chris Sauber and myself, interviewed the CEO of Lineage Cell Therapeutics, Brian Culley. And it was a really good interview. If you want to watch the whole thing, just go to the Clinical Research Circle and you'll find it. It's the first one on there. The link to the actual video is also underneath the show notes here. But what I want to do here is give you guys like a highlight reel slash my reaction and opinion on what Brian says. Haven't really done this before. I've done highlight reels, but this is going to be a reaction video, a little bit differently. So let's get right into it. So just to give you a little background on Lineage Cell Therapeutics, they're a $405 million stock market cap, $405 million market cap. They're trading at $2.42 today. They have three things they're working on in the pipeline. One for dry age-related macular degeneration, one for spinal cord injury, and one for cancer treatments as an adjuvant to checkpoint inhibitors. So I asked him what his moat is, what makes his company's pluripotent cells that they use different than someone else's. Like, what makes theirs special? Because anybody can do this, but if you really look under the hood, they can't. It's a lot more complicated.
Well, let's define pluripotent first, and then I can talk about our intellectual property estate. So pluripotency is the ability for a cell to become any of the other cell types in your body, right? So as you're sitting here talking with me, right, you've got kidney cells and liver cells and bone and hair and brain cells and all of that. So all of those had an origin, right? They started out as something less specific. They were undifferentiated. And these cells, called pluripotent stem cells, they harbor within them the ability to become anything if you give them the right instructions. So I like to think of this as like a recipe. I can take flour, and from flour I can make a cookie, or I can make bread. Cookies and bread are different things, but they started similar, right? And so it's the same thing. These pluripotent cells have the ability to become anything. So they are a renewable source of cells. You don't have to obtain new cells every time. You just keep feeding them and they keep dividing. So it's a really inexpensive way to come up with huge numbers of cells, which can then obviously be used to treat disease. And that's important because most conditions require an enormous number of cells. For our blindness work and macular degeneration, we only need 100,000, but there are conditions out there that people are...
So 100,000 RPE cells for the dry macular degeneration. That's crazy. I now crowdsourced a question from the community about Brian in the past referring to Lineage Cell Therapeutics as the Amazon of cell therapy, and what's going on there. It was kind of a tough question because the person who asked it was kind of saying, well, why are you not hiring people if you're going to be like Amazon? Why haven't you had a increase in employees for over 3 years? So this is why I like Brian. He doesn't dodge questions, and let's see what he said.
Maybe I can help out. So I mean, firstly, declining expenses can also be viewed as a fantastic thing, right? We're being more efficient with our capital.
You can't win, Brian. You spend too much, you spend too little.
Investors often want two things, right? Don't raise money, don't dilute me, but make ton of progress really quickly, right? Those two factors are inherently in conflict, but we'll set that aside as kind of a junior varsity kind of topic. But I think with respect to something I frequently say, which is we aspire to be similar to the Amazon of cell therapy. So what do I mean by that? Well, part of that is just trying to make our technology approachable and understandable. And how I use that phrase is that at one time, Amazon only sold books, right? When Amazon went public in 1997, it had about 2.5 million volumes. Now it has more than 30 million volumes, and I think they probably sell basically everything imaginable. And so that's an analogy to the business that we're running, because right now we can make RPE cells, which are retina cells. We can make oligodendrocytes, which we use for spinal cord injury, and we can make dendritic cells, which can be used for treating cancer. But there are 197 or so other cell types which can be derived from pluripotent stem cells.
Brian's saying there's about 200 cell types in the body that we know right now how to create them from pluripotent cells. But what Brian's saying is all the cells in the body came from a pluripotent cell. So just because we only know how to get to 200 right now doesn't mean that we can't at some point do it for all the cells. I thought it was very interesting. So this is where I got into the interview when the person, back to the question of the person who was saying, well, why haven't you made more hires if you're trying to be like Amazon? This person doesn't understand the concept of CROs and economies of scale and core competencies. This small $400 million market cap biotech does not have the resources nor the wherewithal to run studies on their own. This is why CROs exist. So this is where I kind of discussed the value add of CROs. Even though I bash CROs all the time, that's another podcast. In this clip right here, I discuss the benefit of using CROs for sponsors. Brian, please, to add some color to this, adding some color. There's a type of organization out there called CROs, contract research organizations, and these are the people who hire the monitors, the regulatory affairs. Yes, the sponsor is supposed to have a few staff, but at the stage that LCTX is at, they're not in sales yet. They're in research mode. So you outsource most of this research to vendors. This is my answer to this is my color to this question.
Yeah, if you want to do data management from a clinical trial, sure, you could hire a bunch of people to come in for a very short amount of time and do data management. But it makes far more sense to do a contract with a CRO, get access to 100.
Or you can just have a CRO do it for the time that you need it. So that's where we got into that.
Yes. So right. I don't know how often the number of employees tells you very much about a company. But I will say that with respect to manufacturing cells, that is something I feel very strongly should not be thrown over the wall to another.
He did say, however, that on the manufacturing side of the cells, the actual IP, they do it themselves in-house. They're not outsourcing anything. I thought that was interesting to hear.
So we think it's very important to own and control your own manufacturing.
So next I asked him about how do you plan with the FDA after this phase 1-2 study is over? So they're in the planning stage right now for both for the next studies for the dry age-related macular degeneration and the spinal cord injury. So what the process is of dealing with the FDA and how do you design your next trials? Can you go straight to phase 3? We got into a lot of this stuff here, so just listen a little bit what he had to say.
Of a phase 1-2A study. So we will next move, obviously, to a later stage study. The definition, calling it a phase 2B or calling it a phase 3 or, adaptive designs or continuous phase 2-3s. There's a lot of nuance, and some of this is not well defined. So I tend to try to not give specific details because the specifics will come out of interactions that we have with the FDA. What I can say is that I would like for our next study to be of the size that it can be used as a registrational study. And the reason why I can say that is that the data that we have around arresting GA growth, arresting atrophy, and being able to reverse atrophy, i.e. to be able to identify new retinal tissue that wasn't there before. We're the only company that has ever reported that. And humans can't regrow naturally their retinal tissue, right? So we know that it's our intervention that's leading to these results. So that's very powerful because in the conduct of clinical trials, one of the great challenges is seeing the signal among the noise. So if you think...
So next I asked how much a dose I know we're in research mode, but what a ballpark estimate of what a dose of Oprogen will cost?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's very different than the list price or the patient share of cost, right? So, one of the wonderful things about using pluripotent cells, right? Allogeneic, these are cells that come from a cell line. They're not coming from the patient. So we don't take a patient's cells, manipulate them, and put them back in. That is horrifyingly expensive because it's basically one therapy for one individual. What we have is we have frozen cells, which we can then administer to anyone. So, and obviously anyone who meets the criteria has the condition, et cetera, within certain parameters. But the concept of all patients get the same medicine is what's applicable. Now, what's nice about that is that we have incredibly lower costs associated with scaling our cells from a cell line. And what I would like to share with people is if you make 100 pizzas and then you decide you need to make 100,000 pizzas, you need to buy all of the inputs at scale. You need to buy all of the cheese and pepperoni and everything else. All has to be enough to supply 100,000 pizzas, right? So the cost and the economy of scale isn't as great. But with
Good analogy.
cells,
So buying in bulk is
I'm
going to be cheaper than
simplifying, but
buying
you give them a little bit of sugar,
smaller amounts.
right? And they divide
So
on
he
their
knows
own, and they make
the
exact
cost,
replicas, right? Pizzas
but
don't
the cost
divide
for him
into
is going to
two
be cheaper
pizzas.
when they're doing it at
So
scale
cells can do that. So
than it
we
is
right
now doing
now have the
research.
ability to manufacture 5 billion cells in a 3-liter reactor, which is a very small reactor in terms of pharma's capabilities. So we have a massive, we were talking to a company not too long ago about our cost of manufacturing, and it was quite remarkable. They were stunned because our input costs are so low because the cells know how to divide. They will do that naturally. They want to do that if you give them the energy to do that. And so we have a huge advantage using allogeneic technology or off-the-shelf technology that we can drive our costs down. Now, that's totally different from what is a therapy going to cost? What will it cost the payers? What will it cost Medicare, et cetera? Those are very different inputs. Those will be based on value pricing. How much value do we give to the patient, the market? And then what can we charge and as an appropriate exchange for that value? That's a very distant consideration, but
Right.
I'm not going to reveal any secrets as to how cheap it is for us to do what we do, but we can certainly see very attractive
Good
margins
answer.
in
I like
a
the way
future
he
date.
answered that question. Yeah, I mean, and then I talk about how technology is a deflationary force and why costs might be cheaper by the time their phase 3 is over. Right now it's 2021. By the time their phase 3 study's over and they could start thinking about pricing, if they should be so lucky, uh, who knows? The cost of those services might be down because technology is a deflationary force, especially in something as rapidly evolving as cell therapy and cell manufacturing. Next, here's people want to know what's next. They want to like what's next, as if three things are for a $400 million market cap company, 3 separate indications are not enough. People want next. I'd rather them focus on these 2 things. Even the cancer thing, okay, whatever, throw that in there. 3 things. Focus on this. But people always want to know what's next. What's next? So this is what I asked him.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. He tried to avoid.
There is a next, right? There is a next.
No, I think if
I
you
had
have
to
a
do it.
platform like we
What's
have,
next?
and you have the protections that we have,
When
I
you
kind of
guys
glossed
ask me
over
to
some of the
ask stuff,
intellectual
I'll
property,
ask them. I'm
many,
not
many
going to
hundreds
accept
of
the
applications,
short
many
answer.
issued
No, no.
patents.
What do you mean?
Not very
There
many
is a next?
companies worked in
Of course
pluripotent
there's a
stem
next. You
cells
think
when they
these
were
guys are
first
not thinking it
discovered,
through like
right?
10
And
steps
so
ahead?
a company like ours that has been around for 20 years has this massive pioneering patent estate. And so a lot of people are
Just because they
boxed
don't
out from certain
tell the
areas. So
public about it, they're a publicly
now that
traded
we have
company.
this
They can't just he
engine,
can't just say
and
whatever
we've
he
started,
feels like.
it was one of the things I'm very proud
You
of.
can
We
tell
focused the company down
this
on the
guy really
ophthalmology
likes what he
program
does.
as a
He
proof of
likes the science
concept, proof of
behind it. That's
principle.
very important to
And
me.
as that continues to be validated and we get greater value as an organization, our share price goes in the right direction and more of our alliances come in. That allows us to continue to feed other things, right? I envision this as being like a flywheel that can throw off additional assets.
Right.
So there's a really complicated process around how you evaluate what to go into, right? Nothing's more painful.
The whole team's job is to look for future opportunities. They look at PubMed. They look at things like peer-reviewed journal articles, about things related to pluripotent cells so they could see if they want to license or partner with. This is how research starts. This is how academia research is important, because the researchers are really zoned in on one thing. And then companies like Lineage look and say, okay, let's license, let's do a partnership. That's their biz dev team right there.
Yeah, it's in dry age-related macular degeneration. It's in an area that people have been banging away at for a long time, and I actually think that's going to work. I don't know if it'd be that company or some other company, but I think the approach has some benefit. So, but I actually see it as a positive, because here's the funny thing, and a lot of people aren't going to kind of intuitively think about this, but you have a huge population, 12 million people.
Yeah, see, I like that. Let's let's go back, because
none of them
Brian's
have a therapy,
sneaky
right? There's
smart.
nothing to treat them.
Look,
So
look what he
there's this
said with
massive
his. Look what he
education
said
that needs
about
to
his
occur.
biz dev
So if
guy. Hold
something
on,
gets
hold
there's
on.
probably going to be an enormous campaign to help educate, to collect these patients, to help inform them about, hey, now there's a therapy. That is like sort of like clearing the land area so that you can come in later for, a second opportunity. So I think priming a market, getting a market conditioned and ready to accept a new therapy, provided that your new therapy has advantages, right? It can do more for the patient, or it's less expensive for the patient, or it is easier to administer to the patient, right? As long as you're better in some way, it's actually kind of great to have someone go first and establish and validate a commercial market, and then you go and steal their employees or whatever.
Steal their employees, Brian. I like that.
It really is just a curiosity question.
Chris comes through with a
both
great
Dan and I, we
question
work
here.
in clinical research.
Let's just give
running
Chris the
studies
time
at site
to
level.
answer.
We also have a CRO.
We got a lot of ophthalmologists, by the way, Brian. We got to talk.
All right, I love it.
So again, just curiosity. So typically, when a new therapy is being tested, to show that it is efficacious, they have a placebo-controlled double-blinded study, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, with dry AMD, do you have two patients in one, right? Because they have two eyeballs, right? So can you run this on the same patient, right? One eye is getting therapy, one eye is
That's a good question.
Chris,
getting placebo?
You're not giving yourself enough credit. That's an awesome question. That's very insightful.
It's not dumb at all, Chris.
Yeah, you're 100% correct that the ultimate standard is double blind, which means neither the patient nor the treating physician knows what they're giving the person, right? So that's the double blind study. Now, it's very difficult to do a double blind study when the procedure is a surgical procedure, right? We're not going, I hope that we're not going to be expected to, cut people's eyes and then not deliver something to them, right? So it's hard to do a sham control when you have a surgical procedure, even a surgical procedure that's only 30 minutes and the patient's awake. I mean, it's not very invasive. Oftentimes the patient's out of the OR before our own people are out of the OR cleaning up the equipment. So how do you do it? So one answer is that, yeah, people typically have two eyes. And in a condition like ours, if both eyes have dry AMD, you can treat one of those eyes and you can say, all right, let me see if that eye does better. And that's been a lot of the data we've reported, right? 83% of patients' treated eyes have been the same or better compared to, I think it's 83% of untreated eyes, which have gotten worse. So we have been able to do that. Now, you can't always do that, right? Gene therapy, there's amazing studies that have been done.
So that's the interview. That's the highlights. Again, the whole thing. I think you need to watch the whole thing. This company is way undervalued, not discussed enough. We looked at Sensonics the other day. $1.6 billion market cap. Crazy. This company with three things in early stage is only at 400 million. I mean, we're talking about possibly the Amazon of cell therapy. So link underneath the video to the entire interview. Go check it out. Go hit up Brian. He's a generalist. He knows what's up. He's smart, and you can talk. You can get in early and network with a company that does cell therapy, ophthalmology sites, okay, ophthalmology CRAs, spinal cord injury sites, and oncologists. So let me know what you thought about this one. Let me know what you thought about the reaction video. and I'll catch you later. And if you'd like more, leave comments, robots, or that you want to see more. The robots help shatter the algorithms. Please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.